Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:30, so we are going to be respectful of your time and get started, though I do know that a few people will be joining in as they can. My name is Jill Nogaris, and I'm the coordinator of English at the Virginia Department of Education, and I want to thank you for taking your time this afternoon to meet with us as we discuss best practices for verifying credits in writing using performance assessment to verify high school credit in writing. I am joined today by my colleagues in the Office of Humanities. We have Colleen Cassida and Carmen Carrick on the line, and my colleagues across the aisle in the Office of Student Assessment. I have Holly Cook, Catherine Ringley, and Jason Ellis with us today. And we are all going to be here facilitating this conversation, but several of those people will be monitoring the Q&A. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask during this webinar, please feel free to post your question in the Q&A so that we can address it there. And if we can address it today, we certainly will. And if we need to get back to you at a later time, we will do that as well. So to tell you a little bit about what we hope to do today, we're going to give you some background information about how we arrived at this process. And we are going to review the performance level descriptors that show proficiency in high school writing, and then walk through the process of how to award verified credit, and then show you some samples of the anchor sets and annotations that we have available to support you in your school divisions and with your own training purposes, and then just some additional resources that are available. So as you know, we are a couple of years into this process. The Board of Education did allow and produce some guidelines for using local performance assessments to verify credit in writing. And while we are looking at a collection of evidence or a body of evidence, we are looking at multiple pieces that support this idea that a student is proficient in writing at the end of high school. So while we have had many school divisions who are using this process and have been scoring individual pieces, there is a culminating event where we look at that body of evidence against those 2017 end of course writing performance level descriptors, which describe the level of achievement for advanced, proficient, and fail basic, and try to determine, we judge that body of evidence against that to determine whether or not a student is proficient or advanced according to those descriptors, and which would allow them to earn that verified credit in writing. I do want to remind everyone that while we have been collecting and scoring individual pieces all along in those writing samples, the rubric scores on those samples are completely independent from the PLD determination, because there is no magical number or numerical score on the rubric that actually correlates with a pass proficient or pass advanced performance level from the performance level descriptors. Because again, we are looking at a body of evidence and more than one piece. So just to give you some background, this past March, which now feels like a lifetime ago, we collaborated with the National Center for the Improvement of Educational Assessment to they facilitated a process where we worked with the Center for Assessment and a panel of Virginia educators to conduct a range finding of sample collections of evidence that were provided by various school divisions across the state who, sent in collections of evidence for us to look at and use to create an anchor set that would illustrate the 3 levels of proficiency that are found in the performance level descriptors. So what you are going to see is actually authentic collections of evidence written by Virginia students that demonstrate and outline what we mean within those performance level descriptors. And that way you can use them to understand when we talk about, pass proficient and we give you a performance level descriptor, what does that look like? So we collaborated with that external partner and a panel of Virginia educators to kind of develop this process. So our panel included Virginia educators and supervisors and teachers and specialists from among the superintendent's 8 regions. And they came to Richmond and spent several days with us going through many papers and looking at different bodies of evidence to provide those exemplars that could be used by local school divisions for training materials or anchor sets to help you when you are determining levels of proficiency, but also to have a guide and something to go back to feel confident in your decision-making process. And so the process we used is very similar to the process that we're going to describe today as a best practice for school divisions to use. So we're going to walk you through our model process and then hopefully show you how you can use that to support your local school division in this process. So the Department of Ed's Office of Student Assessment and the English office from the Department of Learning, with the assistance of those Center for Assessment facilitators and those Virginia educators, have decided, deliberated, and have determined to provide a set of 12 example collections of evidence with accompanying annotations for your use. We have 3 at the pass advanced stage, 6 that demonstrate and model a past proficient collection of evidence, and then 3 that would represent a fail and does not meet the benchmark. So to kind of show you kind of how we have put those together to give you a variety of samples to support your work in school divisions. Just a couple of reminders as we're thinking about this. If you choose to use this process and you're using local performance assessments to verify credit in writing instead of one of the other ways of earning a verified credit, then you need to make sure that your assessments cover the writing and research standards included in the English Standards of Learning from 9th grade to 11th grade. So there are 9th grade level standards, 10th grade level standards, and 11th grade English standards that need to be represented in the pieces and samples in your collections. So this is definitely something that is meant to be done over time as a student is developing their writing proficiency in high school. Included in those writing samples should be the 3 types of writing that are covered by the English Standards by the English Standards of Learning for grades 9 through 11. So your samples should include persuasive, analytic, and argumentative writing. And within those 3 pieces of writing, at least one should include a research component. It is important to note that the research process is not evaluated using the performance level descriptors. The use of resources may be implicit within the writing samples, or it may be explicit through the appropriate use of citations. But there should be evidence of research and a research component somewhere within your collection of evidence. So when we're thinking about what can be evaluated and what we're looking at, you'll see that in the beginnings of the performance level descriptors, we start each phrase off with a student performing at this level should be able to use resources, pre-writing strategies, and revision in order to. So keeping in mind that the student writing that's included in these collections should imply the use of resources and pre-writing strategies and revision, because the only evidence that's actually included in the collection should be used to determine if verified credit is to be awarded. And so we're not bringing in a bunch of our graphic organizers and pre-writing and all of that. Our collection of evidence is the 3 pieces, because that writing should demonstrate that our students were able to use resources, pre-writing strategies, and revision. And we're only looking at it as it is compared to the performance level descriptors. And then lastly, before I turn things over to Catherine, just wanted to make sure that everybody knew, regardless of our situations moving forward, that any writing sample included in a student's collection of evidence to be evaluated for a verified credit must have been completed independently by the student without assistance from any person. Therefore, school divisions must determine their process and procedures that they will use to ensure that the guidelines and expectations for local performance assessments used to verify credits in writing are followed with fidelity, including that students are not being provided assistance. I'm going to turn this over to Catherine, who can walk you through the process we used and a few samples.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you again, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. The information in this slide comes from the board-approved guidelines, which can be found on the VDOE website, and they're also going to be linked at the end of this presentation, along with the emergency guidelines that were approved. Note that in this paragraph, you'll note that collections of evidence are reviewed against the performance level descriptors to determine if a verified credit is awarded. And some of this information may be repetitive, but we want to ensure that it's understood that the PLDs are what is used to determine verified credit and not individual scores on the student writing. So when I say PLDs, that is in reference to the performance level descriptors. And those performance level descriptors for end of course writing were updated to reflect the 2017 English SOL. These can be found here as one document. This is on our English SOL page. At the bottom of that table that includes SOL information, you'll see the section, local performance assessments to verify credits in writing. And the PLDs are available there as one document, but you'll also see later that the text for each performance level is going to be found as an introduction to the anchor collections and their annotations. We wanted to point out that the language in the PLDs, they're written to show what a student can do by the end of the course. So you'll notice that even in the fail basic category, we are looking for evidence of what the student does well and not what is missing from the writing. And it may take a little bit of thought to get into that mindset. We're looking for what is there and not what is not there. All PLDs for Virginia SOL are written in this manner, and by comparing the text in the performance levels, you can see the differences in what a student can do at each level. When we are evaluating the collections of evidence for determining if a verified credit is awarded, a school divisions are responsible for assembling that panel. So the local panel should consist of at least 2 educators, at least 2, and they need to have expertise in the English content standards. It's important to note that the current teacher of record for the student who completed that collection should not be included in this panel. And as a side note, you'll notice in the emergency guidelines that the teacher of record may score 1 writing sample completed this year. That's a difference. In the standard guidelines, the teacher of record is not to score any of the student work. So that's a change for this year. But what has not changed is that that teacher may not be on the panel to determine if a verified credit is awarded. It's best practice that each member of the panel has completed the training, practice, and verification sets included in Understand Scoring. And that's to gain a better understanding of Virginia's expectations for student writing at the end of the course. Understand Scoring is a resource available for those who are scoring individual student writing samples. But the language in those rubrics and the language in the PLDs coincide. So training on those rubrics should improve a panel member's ability to evaluate an entire collection by using the PLDs. And again, as a note, the panel does not assign individual scores to the writing samples here. At this point, the panel is only determining if verified credit is awarded to the collection as a whole. The actual training for the panel should be done with the anchors and annotations that are provided by VDOE. And each panelist should complete an independent review of each collection of evidence without knowledge of the student's identity. And then the recommendation of each panelist should be documented. That documentation should be maintained as part of the collection of evidence. To continue with the evaluation process, during the review, panelists are expected to consider the achievement demonstrated within the writing samples themselves, and remember, as a whole collection, rather than using those scores previously assigned to determine verified credit. So there's no numerical score that coincides with a pass advanced, pass proficient, or fail basic score. Each collection must be evaluated by at least 2 panelists. And if there's not total agreement regarding the level of achievement, an additional independent evaluation must be conducted by a person who has expertise in the 2017 English SOL. And that person should also meet the recommendations and expectations set forth for the original panel. So divisions are encouraged to think about who that person will be and designate them as who will make the final determination in awarding a verified credit. We have some best practice expectations for awarding a verified credit. One is that the panel uses a version of the following procedure. You should read and discuss the 12 anchors and annotations that are available now for you, paying close attention to the collections that are on the line between each performance level. And those are going to be especially important because the annotations should point out some areas that show this collection has some pass advanced features and some pass proficient features, but overall the pass advanced features prevail, or pass proficient prevail. And again, at that line between pass proficient and fail does not meet, we want to see the distinctions in the collections between this one demonstrates control here and not here, but overall, it's more of a pass proficient collection. And then this one is more fail, does not meet the expectations. After that, you should individually sort the collections into the 3 performance levels, and we're just calling those stacks here for lack of a better word. And then you should compare each collection in each stack to the determined performance level. So you have sorted it into a performance level and then compare that to the language in the PLDs and the anchors and their annotations to ensure that you have designated it to the correct level, keeping in mind that the PLDs describe what a student can do and what evidence is included in that collection. To continue with that best practice, expectations and recommendations, you should consider sorting the collections in each stack from highest to lowest performance. Use the anchor sets and annotations throughout the process in order to recalibrate and maintain consistency with Virginia's expectations. And this would be especially important if you're evaluating a significant number of collections of evidence, or you are spending a great deal of time evaluating them, or if you've taken a break and come back, you want to continue to revisit those anchor sets and annotations to make sure you're maintaining the expectations set forth in those PLDs. You want to reconvene the panel and look at the scores, or the performance levels that have been assigned to those collections, and recall that Collections that do not have total agreement should undergo that independent evaluation, and that evaluator should carefully compare the collection to the anchors, annotations, and PLDs in order to make that final determination. The performance level descriptors are used to evaluate collections holistically overall. So the language is broad because it is meant to be applied to the entire collection. So a few examples of what you may encounter during that evaluation process. If you have 3 samples, 2 of them might demonstrate consistent control of usage and mechanics, but 1 includes overwhelming errors in capitalization and punctuation. So even though you see this in one feature of the performance level, what about the rest of the PLD features? And what overall is this collection showing? Is it a proficient level of achievement in the writing samples? Or is it more of a fail basic? And you'll have to use your expertise and your training to make that determination. Another example is 2 samples may include a clear logical thesis that illustrates the central idea, purpose, or position and provides for development of ideas, while 1 sample lacks a central idea, purpose, or position at all. So again, you have to consider what about the additional features in the PLD. And is this collection more of a pass proficient or is it more of a pass advanced based on everything, including this instance? Remember that verified credit is not awarded based on one feature of a PLD, and it's the responsibility of that panel to use the PLDs and the VDOE provided annotations to determine the overall performance level for each collection. This will get a little repetitive, but we're showing you a screenshot of the Pass Advance section of this web page, and you'll see it lists the PLD language, and then you'll be able to access the collection. This is student work provided to the VDOE, and then the annotations developed for that for each collection. And there are 3 available to you at the Pass Advanced level, and these are ranked from highest to lowest. So when you view collection number 1, you will see the highest level of achievement in those samples that we decided to post. And then collection number 3 is going to show you that line between Pass Advanced and Pass Proficient. We pulled out a small section of the annotation that's provided for collection number 3, and that is to point out an example of the language that should give you a better idea of the line between Pass Advanced and Pass Proficient for this collection. I wanted to note that the bold text and the italicized text is consistent with the annotation, but the underline has been included specific to this presentation to pull out some of that language that we wanted to share with you. So even though, so the evidence included is precise and relevant and elaborates the thesis. The writing shows that conclusions are drawn appropriately. And then about in the middle, though some repetition and off-topic claims also appear. So this collection is not perfect, but it is Pass Advanced. Down at the bottom, the underlined text, the 3rd writing sample connects ideas within paragraphs in a clear progression, though unity across paragraphs is weak. Unity is stronger in the 1st and 2nd samples as ideas are connected in a clear progression as well as to the overall purpose and position. So similar to the examples provided earlier, you'll see that 1 writing sample shows weakness in this area, but 2 writing samples demonstrate much stronger control of unity. And overall, this collection was pushed into the Pass Advanced category. So that screenshot again, but this is the Pass Proficient section, and the PLD language is provided above the collections. And here we've given you 6 to demonstrate student achievement at the Pass Proficient level. An example from the annotation for collection number 4. Again, this is the highest level achievement at the Pass Proficient level, and so that's going to be just under the line of Pass Advanced. You'll see in the underlined text in the first writing sample, a clear, though formulaic position is presented. The second writing sample has a clear purpose, and the third writing sample has a clear logical position that provides the central idea and purpose for writing, but does not fully provide for the development of ideas. So especially in that third writing sample, you're going to see that the thesis was almost there at the Pass Advanced level, but overall, in this particular feature of the student writing and in the collection overall, this was more of a Pass Proficient. Some language that we pulled out from collection 9, which is on the line between Pass Proficient and Fail does not meet, but is in the Pass Proficient category. This particular example, reasonable to consistent control of additional features of the performance level allows this collection to be considered proficient. So you'll see that the collection is missing or weak in many areas, but overall control was reasonable to consistent, and it is a proficient collection. And finally, we have a screenshot of the fail does not meet category and the performance level descriptor. And then there are 3 collections available to you there, and their annotations. And here we've pulled out some language from collection 10. Again, sorry to repeat myself, but that is on the line between fail and proficient, but it is actually, it was determined that this collection was at the fail level. So though accurate relevant evidence is effectively provided in the first sample and the third sample, more often the support is basic or limited. So in this collection, we have instances of accurate relevant evidence, and you'll find that in student writing. Many times a student is going to do something well in many places, but more often in this collection, the support was basic or limited and pushed it into the fail category. And another example from that collection, while control of usage and mechanics enhances the collection of evidence, overall weakness shown in the features of composing and written expression prevent this collection from reaching a level of Pass Proficient. So the collection demonstrated pretty strong control of usage and mechanics, but holistically, overall, the collection demonstrated performance of fail does not meet. And as a final note about these collections, readers should only score what was written by the students. Written includes appropriately attempting to embed and cite research from outside sources. Before, during, and after scoring student samples, it is a local division's decision how to handle intentional and unintentional plagiarism in a process or based on guidance from the Virginia Department of Education. When assigning a performance level, the reader should evaluate only the student's work and not information that has been plagiarized. And of course, the hope is that at the point where verified credit, it's being determined if it's awarded, this will have been handled in some way, but as an example, in collection 7, you'll see that one of the writing samples definitions were provided, but then there was no attempt at a citation. And so because of this, the evaluator should not consider those sentences because they're not the student's original work. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jill to share some resources.
Thank you, Catherine. So if any of you are keeping an eye on our site, you will know that around noon today, our site was updated to include this collections of evidence page and a couple of additional resources. So I've pulled this from the page, but if you are on our English Standards of Learning page, you are familiar with the table at the top that includes our standards, our framework, and our crosswalks and additional instructional resources, but that under that table that discusses the 2017 standards of learning, we have a section dedicated to local performance assessments to verify credits in writing. And so we have been building and adding additional resources here. A couple of things are new since probably the last time that you checked, and I want to call your attention to the last two. There is the procedures for determining if verified credit is awarded effective fall 2020. That document went live today to support you in this process. Much of the material from that document was found in this webinar, but if you'd like to see the original text and get some more details on the procedures to follow, that Word document is posted there. And then below that is a link to evaluating the collections of evidence to verify a credit in writing. And that link will take you to a new web page that houses all of those anchor sets and annotations. So the ones that we screenshot in here are actually found on that collections of evidence page. So that went live around 12 p.m. So if you go to our site, you'll find it, but I will also be sending out this presentation to participants, registered participants. So you will also receive a copy here, and that way you can have the links all in one location as well. And then below that, you will see that we have the pieces that are specific to this year for using local performance assessments to verify credit in writing for the 2020-2021 school year, which addresses many of the pieces that we've discussed in earlier webinars, and then information that pertains specifically to the November Board of Education meeting. So you will see that those emergency guidelines are there, and the updated verified credit plan if you would like to use this with the new flexibilities that are allowed. And then we've also included the procedures there as well. So all of that is found under the table on our English SOL page. We know that this is a lot coming at you at a very, very busy time of year, and that there are probably many more unanswered questions than answered questions at this time. So we do want to invite you back if you're interested, just for a question and answer session. And so obviously, if we are going to do this on Monday and it is already Wednesday afternoon, there's not a lot of time, but we did want to give you the opportunity to sift through the materials, to go check out the website, to look at the annotations, to look at all the guidance documents, and then ask any questions you may have. And then even if you don't have questions, you're welcome to tune in just to hear what questions you might not have considered yet that maybe a colleague has. And so we're inviting you to a webinar that will be held Monday, December 7th at 10 a.m. And you will need to register for this. Again, the link will be provided in this PowerPoint, but I will also send out an email, and I believe the student assessment email address will also send something out to DDOTS if you're interested in participating. But we also have a Google form here where you will be able to submit any questions. So again, that will be part of the email and it will be part of this PowerPoint. But if you would like us to address questions and be prepared to address your questions instead of us needing to say that we'll get back to you, we would appreciate that you submit those questions by the close of business on Friday so that we have a little bit of time to prepare for Monday morning. So you do have the ability to submit those questions. That Google form will be posted. And obviously all of this is entirely optional, but we do want to support you and we do want to be available. So please note that that is coming. If you have time in your calendar, great. We would love to sit with you and just talk with you and see how we can support you moving forward. But in addition to that, as usual, we just have our contact information at the end. And we just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules this afternoon. And with any additional time that was dedicated to this webinar that you are now getting back in your life, I would encourage you to go check out our collections of evidence page and kind of start sorting through the materials that were screenshot here or just discussed in this presentation. But thank you so much for your time and your participation. And I hope that we have the opportunity to connect on Monday. I did record this session. I will be posting it on our YouTube channel, and it will also be added as a resource on our collections of evidence page. So I know that not everyone could be here today, or you might want to use this information in a professional learning network with colleagues or with teachers in your division. So we will be posting this presentation as a resource to support training efforts within your school division. But other than that, I just want to thank you for your time and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Hey, Jill, this is Holly, can I just interject that we do still have some questions in the questions and answers, and if we haven't been able to answer them during the webinar, we will follow up with you individually after.
Absolutely. And we can also add them to our question and answer session.
Yeah, thanks.